For centuries, there's been this one single question that has, divided theologians and totally shaped how people read a huge chunk of the Bible. Today, we're going to unpack that very question, and we're going to do it by drawing on some really compelling arguments based on the work of Chuck Missler to get right to the heart of it.
So what is this big question? It all boils down to this. Has the Christian church completely replaced the nation of Israel in God's plan? I mean, that's a huge question with massive implications, right? Because how you answer it can change your entire understanding of the Bible's endgame. So, before we can even begin to answer that, we've got to get really clear on the central idea that's driving this whole debate in the first place.
Okay, so this idea has a formal name. It's known as Replacement Theology, or sometimes you'll hear it called Supersessionism. And it's basically the viewpoint that the church has stepped in and taken Israel's place, inheriting all the promises God originally made to them way back in the Old Testament.
And that brings us to the two opposing camps. On one side, you have that replacement view we just talked about. But on the other side is what's called the distinction view. Now, this is the core of the argument we're digging into today. It suggests that Israel and the church have completely distinct promises and that they're more like parallel entities, not a sequence where one just erases the other.
So what's the foundation for this distinction view? Where does it come from? Well, the entire argument is built on a handful of ancient foundational promises or covenants that were made by God.
And here's the crucial point, the absolute key to the whole thing. It's the nature of these promises. The argument is that they are totally unconditional. What does that mean? It means they don't depend on Israel's behavior or performance. They're seen as sovereign decrees that, from this perspective, simply cannot be broken or transferred to someone else.
So let's look at the big ones. These are the specific covenants that really form the bedrock of the argument. You've got the Abrahamic covenant, which promises land and descendants. Then there's the land covenant, which is seen as a perpetual deed to a specific piece of real estate. You also have the Davidic covenant promising an eternal dynasty, and, this is a big one, the new covenant, which this viewpoint argues was originally promised specifically to the house of Israel.
Okay, so let's follow the logic here. If these ancient promises are still in effect, what does that mean for the future? Well, it has to imply that the nation of Israel has a distinct and still unfulfilled role to play in what theology calls end times prophecy. And just so we're all on the same page, that word, eschatology, it's simply the study of final things. The ultimate destiny of humanity and the conclusion of history as we know it.
And this timeline right here is a perfect way to visualize the resulting framework. So in the past, you see those unbreakable covenants established with Israel. The present is viewed as the church age, a kind of unique historical period. But then the future holds a tribulation centered specifically on Israel, which all leads to a final millennium where those original covenants finally get fulfilled right here on earth. So in this model, you see Israel and the church each have their own very distinct act in the play.
So let's bring it all together. What is the core takeaway from all of this? It leads to a really powerful conclusion about two peoples and what looks like two different destinies. So the ultimate conclusion from this perspective is this. It's not a story of replacement, but one of parallel paths. Israel and the church are seen as two different peoples with different origins, different missions, and different destinies, all running at the same time within one massive overarching plan. One doesn't just cancel out the other.
And this is where the whole idea kind of crashes into the modern day. The teaching wraps up with this really impactful quote. As we watch world events, it is clear that Israel is following her prophetic scenario. And what that does is it highlights the belief that these aren't just ancient theological talking points. They're seen as actually unfolding on the world stage, right here, right now.
So, we're going to leave you with a final question to chew on. If this viewpoint is correct, that Israel and the church are really on distinct prophetic paths, how does that change the way you might interpret the global headlines you see every single day? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.